Welcome to the Bitcoin Core App Design Call. We are at number 86. So what's up? Thanks for joining. You could be watching TikTok videos right now. You could be bickering with strangers in some random internet forum, but you're here. What made you choose to be here instead of doing all these other worthwhile activities?
Your funny announcements. That's the main reason I usually join these calls.
Appreciate it.
This is one of the first projects I joined. I jumped on when I started at the Bitcoin design community. So it feels good to still be taking part in this one. It's nice to be involved in one long-term project. I like it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and quite the progress we've made. So we have some design stuff. There's some PR stuff going on. Let me share the document again. Maybe we can wait for the tech stuff until Harold shows up. Design stuff, we have, I think, 3 things that I'm aware of. One of the wallet creation flow, for which I made some mock-ups. When was that? Let me try to pull that up. Bitcoin Core app. That was April 26th. Hi, Harold. How's it going?
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's going on?
Been a while since I've been on the calls. A bit sick,
No.
but I'm doing okay.
That's good.
Yeah, we're just starting to kick things off. We have some PRs to look at, and then some design things to look at.
I've got some research stuff to share as well.
Yeah, I include research in design for what it's
Perfect.
worth.
Perfect.
Yeah, but Harold, do you want to give an update or have anything that you wanted to get off your chest or say or anything else?
Yeah, I think this week was distracted on something that I can talk to you guys one-on-one. But development is still happening. And so we do have a few PRs to look at. Some things still to unthaw. And I'm personally still getting caught up on some of the old work here. But yeah, we'll be moving this along. So no clear updates here to give right now. But yeah, we'll be moving this along.
You mean updates in terms of the bigger picture of the project?
Yeah, and especially PRs that need to be open, work that has been being done but isn't completed yet, just isn't in a state to publish.
Yeah. So the ones that I'm involved in is the UI only custom data directory display, which I tested earlier as well. And so, I mean, design-wise, it's pretty simple. There's some interactive details, a little bit of spacing, some color, and then do we show the data directory or do we not show it? Do we only show it for the one? It's just small interaction stuff, but I feel like that one should be pretty much ready to go, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, there's a couple of things here that I think are close to being merge ready. For moving along the data directory, we just need to allow for configuring options without setting it. So there's an earlier PR by Johnny on being able to set settings without saving it until onboarding is done, and so that's required for it. Yeah, so we would want to move that along, but the UI part is going well.
Yeah, so that's like a user flow state versus global application state type of deal.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, if someone wants to test it, you're welcome to. The other one, this one was what I saw, introducing tooltip for the block lock button. So here's this little indicator that tells you when you hover the block lock in the browser bar, that tells you what the status is. I haven't tested it yet, but I want to check that out. That seems. I guess I was tagged here 2 days ago, so I should look at that one. And then Pablo just asked about
He asked about for the proxy settings.
Correct.
I think he left a question in the chat for the. Let me see.
Yeah, so I responded to that one. So we had an early version of this one, and then later on we added more network settings. So you have a default proxy and a Tor proxy. You can enable them, and then you have different types of networks, and they can use either of the proxies. And then when you make changes, you have to restart the application for the changes to take in effect. That's basically the functionality. And there was some questions around, do we use an inline pop-up, and how do we tell people that they need to restart, some minor stuff. And I had one open question around whether there was some conversation around showing which proxies are active, and I don't quite understand what was meant by that. There was an early design here that says, is it like, okay, this proxy is active and 3 networks are using it and 4 peers are routing traffic through them or something? That's where I would just try to get clarification on. But I think otherwise it's just minor.
I think on where it's active is in. It wouldn't be with what peers we're communicating with. I think we talked about this in the dev chat as well, and it was it's with what networks is it active in, which we do have a design for. And so, for example, you can set a proxy for IPv4, and you can set a proxy for Tor. And so that's shown in the design there. And then I believe it's also possible to set a separate proxy for IPv6, but in the GUI, in the Q2 widgets GUI, it was just never allowed. Which we do have to look over the code there. But I think that is the case. And so he was confused around how we would display that. Because I think in the design we have, so when you set a default proxy, we would show, okay, this is the default proxy for IP and Tor. And then if you set a Tor proxy, so it would change from, okay, in the default proxy area, this is for IPv4 and IPv6. And then Tor proxy would show, okay, so this is active for Tor. Does that make, okay? So if we look at, you were looking at a previous design where okay, go to the, you just previous to this in the background, you just had the section where it showed where the proxies were active under. So it had that little
green lights.
Yeah, with the green lights.
All right.
Yeah, here. So setting default proxy. So, okay, let's say we're setting one proxy. Then this would be the default proxy for IPv4, IPv6, and Tor connections. So let's consider that state, right? So then we would have below the default proxy text, we would have, okay, so it's active for all 3 networks. Now, here we're showing the state where we have enabled default proxy and Tor proxy. So now we have another element that shows, okay, this is now active for Tor, and then above it updates to IPv4, IPv6. But you can set a proxy for only IPv6, but alternatively, you can set one for IPv4 and for IPv6. So it just, the possibilities gets complicated there. So kind of the states is a bit complicated. And so then it's a question of how do we display that?
Yeah.
How about
one
these
thing that
other
just came to
two?
mind is it could be like advanced configuration, and that screen changes from the terminology of default proxy to IPv4 proxy, IPv6 proxy, if the user in some way enables this advanced configuration.
So would you have like, so now there's default proxy, you would have IPv6 there, then you would have, what was the other one?
IPv4.
Then you would have Tor, so they would be listed underneath each other.
Yeah, so they would be kind of in a list.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of confused. First question though, what about I2P and CJDNS? Is that still a thing?
Yes, those are still a thing, except technically they're a thing, but I think the usage is extremely low. But yes, technically they are a thing. I always see that I2P is broken. But yes, yeah, they are a thing. They are in core. The support for connecting through those networks are in core. But definitely the usage is very low. That should change. It'd be good if it changes. But yes, they are.
Okay. So how about this other design? I feel like the previous design with was just so confusing, and I think with this one I try to separate those two things instead of trying to match these different things up. So at the top you either enable or you disable the proxies, and the bottom you assign which network should use which proxy. Instead of having
so
this
immediately
combo.
yeah, assigning seems to make more sense now since we can have a list. But then yeah, okay. So I think one thing is what feels good. So okay, so for let's say, okay, this is funny. We'll have some research presented, but we don't know how users
Right.
configure. But I would imagine 90% of the time, they set a default proxy if you're setting a proxy, or so a large percentage of the time they'll set one proxy, and that's it, right? Setting different proxies, I imagine, is a smaller subset. So does that influence how we would design it, as in for the majority of the time it would be the one default proxy, most likely?
I mean, the way this here is intended is that you have the default one, you enable it, and all the networks are by default set to use the default one. So if you've both disabled, it's going to be grayed out because no proxies are enabled, right? But then as soon as you click enable at the top, these will light up, and you're going to see, okay, it's using default one, and it says choose which proxy each network should use or uses. And that's it. And then you can by that at that time you can change the default option to either none or default per network. And then if you enable Tor, then you get one more option each with this, and it works with this little inline drop down here.
Yeah, Yarrow, I just want to circle back to something that you said, but I just want to see that I heard it correctly. There was something about IP4 and IPv6, and then about them being able to be activated at the same time, or only one being able to be activated. Could you just repeat that bit, please?
Yeah, so you can have an IPv6 proxy, and so that's fundamentally different than an IPv4 proxy. And so so the address format looks different. They're kind of different things. So yeah, you can set a proxy for the we'll group them into the IP networks, right? You can set a default proxy for the IP networks, or you can set different ones for them. So for example, you can not operate under IPv4. You can choose to only operate under IPv6. And so then your proxy would be under IPv6, right? You would be specifying an IPv6 proxy. So there's like a lot with the IPs, but yeah, okay. So, but what's important here is that some people do choose to only communicate over IPv6 and not IPv4. And I'm not an expert on them, but I know that IPv6 is newer, and so newer is better or something. But yeah, that is something you can do. Yeah, it all gets, when you go down the possibilities, it's all very complicated and very
Yeah, I
so
don't,
many
I
ways.
don't think it's too crazy here. So I'm this is not the best example here, but let me see if I can illustrate this somehow. So this in this super ugly green here is my computer, my node, and it wants to communicate with other peers. So here it doesn't use a proxy. It talks directly to different people, right? And this is IPv4, which is like one way type of connecting. This one is IPv6. This one is I2P, and this one is this one's like the purple way of talking to each other. This one's the orange way of talking to other ones, right? And my proxies are disabled here. They're not doing anything. These are my two proxies. But then if I configure it differently, then I can say, well, I want my IPv4 connections to go through my default proxy. And then I want this is my default. This is my Tor proxy. And this is a Tor connection. And this is another I2P or so, right? This is what we're talking about, right? Is it?
Yeah.
Am I understanding it correctly? So
Yeah.
we're figuring
Yeah,
out, are these things enabled or not? And then for each of those ways of connecting, where do they go through? Do they go through this intermediary, or is there like an intermediary between the peer and myself?
Yeah, and so I might have been explaining it in a more complicated way, but I guess what I was trying to say is we can have more than 2 specified proxies, and so so that kind of changes the design there, because technically we can have more than 2.
Okay.
Okay.
You just have 2 default ones, right? But you can configure more. It's just which one does it default to that you set in these default settings?
So okay. Sorry. One thing to always keep in mind is that sometimes there is a disparity between the options available to configure in the Qt widgets GUI and then what is actually able to be done with Core. And so one thing is literally within the Qt widgets GUI, we've had the ability to enable 2. And so a default for IPs and then for Tor, but you can have more, right? And it's just not a visual option within the GUI. And so because of that disparity, we can say that in the Qt widgets GUI, yeah, you've only had the ability to do that, but you have the ability to do more if you specify it through the command line or whatsoever. And so with this QML GUI, we would want to have that feature. It's only not in the Qt widgets GUI because somebody just didn't add it.
Okay, so it's more like add another proxy. It's more like this, and I don't know what this would say. Maybe this would just say disabled or enabled or something.
Yeah, Harold.
Right. That makes more sense.
Yeah,
This makes more sense.
I had a question around this. Like, what does like default mean? Because like if you don't like turn it off, does it default means it's on by default or?
Yeah, so a proxy definitely isn't. So by default, it means any connections we make, it's going to go through this one. And so within the Qt widgets GUI, the design decision was kind of like, well, most people will want to specify one proxy. And so that was called the default proxy. Tor is quite popular. So the option to specify a proxy for Tor is there. So now you have default, which really meant, okay, it doesn't matter where these connections are coming from. We default to this proxy. This is our main proxy. Now we can add a secondary proxy with Tor. So maybe the name there is a bit confusing, but it's not something that's like on by default or anything like that, because
Okay.
you have to specify, right, your
So
proxy.
then I think I kind of get it. So but then is it possible that my default proxy is actually a Tor proxy? That's possible, right? Because if I only use Tor, then my default proxy is a Tor proxy.
So if you specify proxy, would this operate under Tor? Well, yeah. So your connections, they're going to communicate with the proxy server that you specified. So yeah.
Hmm. Add another proxy to say.
The Tor peers that you would connect to would be peers that also communicate with IP peers. If your default proxy was an IP namespace proxy, then you're connecting to Tor peers, but they also will communicate to IP peers when they can choose to only connect to Tor peers. Does that make sense?
I am a bit confused right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm just yes. So if you were to specify default one, yeah, then Tor peers you connect to are communicating to that.
Hmm.
Yeah. There's more to say there, but I guess I might confuse
Yeah.
some things. Yeah.
I think like one question like I have another here is like if we are like designing the UI for the more default use case, so then maybe like we keep the defaults. Hey, hi Yakub. Like we keep the UI like real simple and like have all these details in the conf file, or like we don't show it in the UI.
I do think it's important that it's like the UI we have is configurable. Although, yeah, I mean, we can admit here most people will specify one proxy, and that will be their proxy. So if there's a way to kind of combine the ability to have full configurability, but still have it be simple for that one use case, then that's good.
Yeah.
Impossible.
And IP port connections.
Okay, so okay, so let's say something like that. I guess one thing missing here is enabled. Okay, so this is what it looks like by default. We have a default proxy, but it is disabled. I can click it and I can enable it, and then this should say done probably, and then it's enabled. And these options here show up. And then I can add another proxy. And once I've made a bunch of changes, I've added my default one and my Tor one. I can add another one if I want to, and then I can use these settings below here in order to assign networks to different proxies that I've set up. And then I need to restart for these changes to apply. Something like that.
I do like that. So quickly, one important thing comes to mind. And although this isn't recommended because you want a good view of the network, and so you don't just want to operate under one network, some people who use Tor only want to, and this you can set core to run in this mode to only connect to other Tor peers. And so you
Right.
won't even look at IP peers, you'll only connect to Tor peers. So then I guess that if we are under this mode, the only thing I think of is, I guess, IP there. Well, IP would still be IP. Oh, okay. Sorry. I think the design is still good, even in that case.
So you're saying there would be a situation where we have, it's almost like, I should say disabled here.
Yeah, so I was thinking about the word IP, but that is correct, even with it is a Tor IP. No, yeah, the design would still be good, but yes, we would do something like disabled because it's not even possible. We're not even going to communicate with them. Now, technically, I think you can still set the proxy. Okay, technically, let's say you wanted to only communicate with Tor peers. You could set proxies for everything. It's like it's like the way you run core, but it would be unused. And so within the GUI, if it's impossible, if it's unusable, it might as well be disabled, right? Like that's what we should convey.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it can either be disabled because you have no proxies enabled at all, or it's disabled because you disable it by running core in a way that those connections are just not allowed. And there are two different ways. One is generally disabled. The other one is currently temporarily disabled due to some other setting. Okay, cool. So that's that's good to know. That's quite the change in this functionality. I don't want to take the whole call on this one. I'll try to take notes then and update that issue later. And then we can. I don't think it changes. I mean, if this design is pretty much close to what we want it to be, we can just refine that.
Yeah.
We need two states for adding and editing here, and the delete option, and yep, some details there. Okay.
Yeah, I know Pablo was really interested in this. I think so for this call I had looked up 14 UTC to like Eastern time and it told me 10, and I imagine this might be happening to other people.
Oh,
And so we all thought the call's at 10. So I am messaging them. I know Pablo wanted to go over this.
No, check it's good to check in Discord in the events tab, and if you subscribe to the calendar, which I assume the calendar, some people don't subscribe to it because there's all kinds of stuff in there. But the Discord events tab, and I think in Discord you can say I'm interested, and it's going to notify you.
it will. Yeah, exactly.
Do you know if it notifies you ahead of time or only when it begins?
I feel like it notifies you ahead of time because I do remember getting a ping every now and then. In terms of time, I think it's something like 15 minutes. Maybe it's in the settings.
So if you have it wrong, incorrectly in your head, and the plan for your day is different, it's not gonna. Here they are.
Okay, there's Johnny. Yeah, I think something happened with the time. And here. So yeah, I think the refactoring here on the proxy, it makes a lot more sense. And so I think Pablo would be happy with that. I don't know if he'll be coming on, but we'll go over that with him, and I think that it's in a better state, just because there's so many ways to configure it, and it gets messy, and so I think a lot of his questions were on, well, technically, how do we convey this within the GUI? And I think that design now is a lot better.
Yeah. Christoph, I really liked the visual that you drew there, right? And just like Johnny was like saying, right now, that just through text and the typical navigation ways that we have, it is like difficult to communicate all these things. So do you think like we could use a visual to communicate what's the configuration right now and things like that, like in these settings itself, like just instead of all these list items, have like a visual that at least shows what's happening?
Sounds great. Sounds low priority overall in the bigger picture of the project. Could be cool to just design it and put it out there and see, and just put it on the wish list. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah. If we are like assuming that we are like designing the application for like regular people should be able to use and understand what's happening, then like something like this visual thing, it would go a long way in like for the people to at least understand. Because I think like one of the primary reasons that I have ever tried out this stuff is that I'm intimidated. I'm like, I don't even know what a proxy is, or if I like, can I like mess it up, can I make like some big mistakes, or can I like sometimes your node will not connect and you don't even know why, and it's like that fear. And if I'm that's why I'm like afraid of even trying out something like this. And so if it's more understandable, I think more people might even use it. Like Harold was saying like, hey, people don't use I2P and this, and maybe it was like super trivial to use it. Maybe people would use it. I don't know. I mean, the visual could be pretty helpful. Like it doesn't have to be just like a ornamentation thing. It can be something that helps adoption and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think one barrier is kind of outside of people need to set up these I2P clients and stuff. So people first need to like set up I2P daemon and these things.
Yeah, that's where we have an issue in the guide about whether we should create a user guide. Not an issue but in the repo, whether we should create a user guide for these types of things.
Very
Spin up your
necessary.
proxy in 3 minutes.
Very necessary.
Okay, that seems like a good extra issue here to just. I mean, maybe the application doesn't have to include this visual. Maybe the user guide for starters can just include it, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that seems like a good idea to make this a little bit more plastic.
Is there any other bits that anyone wants to share? Because I'd love to share the research findings as well. It'll just take a few minutes. What if you want to connect Piers Brosnan?
Can I just ask, did I understand correctly? You're thinking about user guides for core or for the...
Yeah, that's...
Okay.
Let me just show you this here. So that's part of the research plan here. Here it is. I'll just share my screen here. So here it is here. So everything, whatever questions and things that are not clear that comes from the design and implementation testing is all going to feed into user documentation. So some user documentation is going to be like a video walkthrough of, people involved in the project on how to test PRs, some educational stuff on why running a node. There's tons of that on the internet, but maybe just pulling that together, and then walkthrough docs and onboarding, which is what Christoph filed an issue for that. So hopefully all of these things feed in together into this here. Yeah, that's the idea, at least. Finding the questions that people are asking the most and feeding that back into user documentation. I guess this should be user and testing documentation, because it's not really, it's not only users, it would be us testing as well. Yeah.
So in the end, the goal is to have this linked like somewhere in the like bitcoin.org or
I don't know about the location, but somewhere, maybe wherever people download this application, ideally there's also a thing that says, well, you got some questions, here are some user guides.
Yeah, exactly.
Wherever that may end up being. We still need to redesign bitcoincore.org, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's something. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, nobody's gonna object to redesigning. Oh, well, depending on how it's undertaken. Totally. But there's definitely an openness to redesign it, of course. And yeah, I don't think anybody would be opposed to good documentation.
Yeah, it's needed. It's very much needed. And if in some way within the application, when someone's confused, it could link them to the user documentation, it's going to save people a lot of time and confusion as well. So ideally, that would somehow link in if once the documentation's in a good place. Yeah. Is it okay for me to share a little bit about the prototype testing that we've done so far? Just a little bit.
Yeah.
So Christoph helped me with the prototype. So first I created a prototype, and then Christoph tweaked the prototype and tweaked some of the animations as well. And we've done 3 tests so far, and we've gotten feedback from 1 person through not doing a test. Jakob is going to be jumping on and doing tests as well, and I actually have 2 tests scheduled for next week.
You're muted.
I'm just muted there.
Yeah, I have 2 tests next week scheduled as well, and I think Jakob is also planning to do 1. So we're going to be tag teaming and really making sure that this is tested thoroughly, not only the designs, but also the developed versions as well.
Yeah, and the prototype includes the current onboarding we have, but at the end it says it offers you to create or import a wallet, which you can skip. But the assumption is you go through setting up a regular wallet. So no multi-key, it doesn't even have that option. It's kind of the MVP version of the onboarding. Then I think you type in a name, password, backup, confirmation, and then you go into the main application. So that first version of the onboarding with wallet creation.
Yeah, this is really the basic onboarding. And then so these are the people's comments. The current users said they thought it was very straightforward, they understood where to click, and then a lot of people said it was a pretty standard procedure for the wallets. Someone who's completely new said that the flow is very understandable, it's very easily explained, it reminds them of Blink Wallet, and they liked how it was very nicely explained in a few simple words. They also like the fact that it's only a password and that there's no need for a seed phrase. So that was interesting as well. Current user said that it's not clear to me which type of user you expect. It's not clear the technical level of that person. They would like to get more feedback. Sorry, this is not copied over correctly, of when the node is syncing. I'm just going to edit this here. They would like to get more feedback about the node syncing. So that was some.
At which point did they say that?
Right at the beginning. Actually, right at the beginning of the flow, they said that. They said that they wanted to understand where it is in the syncing process, but
that must be an assumption, because the current GUI instantly starts syncing as soon as you start the application, and the new one doesn't. It only starts that after onboarding. So maybe that's where that comes from.
Could be. That is a current user that said that. That is the current user that said that. So the feedback is from just everyone's. This is 4 different people's feedback combined. The first bit was that the first 2 steps, I think Christoph has seen this as well. The first 2 steps are educational, while the third one and all the ones that follow are configuration steps. And the problem he sees is that all of these look the same. And then I linked out to his Google document with all of his comments, and he actually solved the problem as well by doing a redesign, which is in a Figma file. So that was his, and specifically he was referring to, this is educational here, these 2 screens, and then the screens after that, so this is configuration here. And then, right, so then the screen that got the most feedback was actually the storage amount screen, interestingly enough.
Makes sense. That's where the whole decision about pruning and not pruning, which is such a counterintuitive thing.
Yeah, some of the comments were, I don't really understand why I should reduce the storage. What are the advantages of reducing the storage? And these are quotes directly from the people, so these are not my words. Someone else said it's important. I would obviously choose my external hard drive. Here it would be nice to add a warning if the storage exceeds the available amount. They said it's not quite clear what are the implications if you choose a pruned node. And then someone else said the option detail settings feels a bit out of place here. it only holds 2 options, which makes me wonder if they could be placed somewhere else. The ability of setting the storage limit feels like more like a third option to me. So he would have reduced storage, store all data, and custom. And Christoph replied to that on the Google Doc, saying that custom is not something for the MVP. So the storage amount has a fair amount of feedback. They want to know what are the advantages, what would be the implications. So that one was interesting. Here they said, well, after I click start, it jumps to another screen without giving any feedback on whether the download process is started. This can lead to confusion.
Yeah, that should probably be next. That used to be the end of this flow, and then we went to the node, and that's why it said start, but it really should be next.
The next one. What else is coming up here? So
can I ask you about the beginning where you said about educational screens and
go for it. Yeah.
If you configure it, like I don't understand fully what's the issue here, that the user thought it's just too similar and it just doesn't see a difference, or
yeah, I will show you. He then went one step further and he solved the problem by doing a design, which I'm just going to share the design that he came up with. So he called this an improvement proposal. I think this is clear here. So in his improvement proposal, he suggested, and this is Ferrero from the community. Ferrero, if you're watching this, big shout out. Here you see he does the educational screens all in one. And by doing this sort of design here, he's showing that this is education and that the person moves through first education and then the person then moves through the installation process. So this is showing that this is education, and this is showing that this is actually an installation process.
Well, and steppers are added now.
So it's kind of like a visual sort of differentiation of the two. So that was an interesting.
Yeah, the steppers might be a good idea, because when you start the process, you may have no idea how long it will take, how many steps it is.
Yeah.
I feel like this has come up 10 times already.
It's already come up 10 times. So. Yeah. The steppers has come up many times.
So
yeah.
I understand how. To me, this feels like UI overkill here. It just seems unnecessary. Why not just keep it very simple? Next. It's not like we have that much going on. This just seems like unnecessary complications.
Yeah, so he came up with this design solution here, but I'll just come back to the user feedback on the current prototype. I'm just going to move forward through them.
It's good to have in mind that we don't have to change design to every comment, right? We need to find the real issues that are especially repeated, right? And then that's the big signal we should change something.
Exactly.
It's great to see for sure.
The seed phrase was another one that came up. It definitely gives you an idea that people are very familiar with a very certain type of user flow. So when they don't see the seed phrase, they're like, hey, where's the seed phrase in the backup process? But people actually liked it that there was no seed phrase. But that was just a surprise for them.
It's refreshing for them.
It is.
But I wonder, so I think that might be a experience for a lot of users, right? Because now this just basically every wallet has seeds. But we also know there won't be seeds in core. I guess there's no Go.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we should address it somehow in the UI.
Mm-hmm.
I know why there's no seed phrase and a link to the guide. I don't know. It's just, I wonder how needed is that.
Because people are expecting it. Yeah.
We do have something in there that says, after your wallet's created, it says, it's now ready. This is what it is. Your backup is stored in this file. So that could be a moment to address that.
Yes, yeah, sounds good.
Somewhere at the end, I think.
I mean, as you can see, there's not really that many comments, Just a quick summary. The main comments were about the storage screen. So the storage amount screen. So that seemed to be the biggest feedback on the whole design. And then someone who's using it to run a node mentioned that they really like the fact that there's a conf file in there, because they would go into the conf file settings when they set up a new node. So, you know, other than that, there's no big surprises. There was also a comment about the block clock as well. It would be a nice touch if we could see the current block time. So,
isn't that what it is?
yeah, I mean, that wasn't understood from the design. So that was, yeah.
This is awesome. Thank you for collecting all this stuff. Super
Yeah,
helpful.
so everything, whatever, Jakob is going to do tests and I'm going to do more tests, but I think the biggest area is the storage amount screen, and for the rest, things seem to be fairly understandable for people going through the flow. There was nothing super, I mean, maybe just a little bit here, but I think that this screen wasn't really relevant for them. Just going into this one. Two people, I forgot to add in that comment over here, but two people with the connection settings, they said that they did not understand map port using UPnP and then map port using, you know, NAT PNP. But these are people who, one was running a node and one was a complete new user. So I don't know if that's something to think about, or if, you know, we say it is what it is, that's what it's called.
And I don't understand what it means.
I do not understand what that means. Yeah.
So they both accomplish similar functionality, but they're just two different libraries that can be optionally core can be optionally built with them to map ports, and so that's going to be necessary, especially if you're going to have peers connecting to you. So if you're a listening node, and they're just two libraries that can be used. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the first two words are already a problem. Map port.
Right.
Is it like, do I see a map of different ports around the world and maybe how
No.
you know, goods are getting transferred around?
No, internally it's kind of just like making a list of where people can of how it'll internally connect, and so it's not a map.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. Yeah, that okay. Could be a separate thing to kind of figure out if there's some easier
terminology. Yeah, that's going to be a discussion for another time. But yeah, that's it from my end. I mean, I think the feedback is pretty positive so far, and then we'll just get some more feedback and then just keep on going. So yeah.
So
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm going to join the tests with Mo and start preparing the new flow for the second flow to test. And just with that feedback, I'm also going to work on the UI improvement proposals based on the feedback.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, this is going to keep us honest doing these tests regularly.
Very honest. Very, very honest. Yeah.
And quickly though, I was interested. Did we ever learn anything from the research done on how people use core?
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't have much time to share that right now, but for sure, I mean, just top of my head, most of the people that we interviewed were using it to run a node. And that was kind of, you know, the node settings, which is, you know, very relevant, because if you still walk through this current user flow, they can still skip the whole create wallet flow and they can just, you know, use it to run a node. I do feel though that we do need to speak more to the node runners to find out what settings they're using and why. And I feel that that's an additional bit of research that needs to be done.
Bitcoin Conf.
Exactly. But for now, just Yeah, I can't pull. It was so many months ago. I'd be happy to share it on another call, but yeah, it's
yeah. On that, I also I plan to just take a look at this research again, at the report, more raw, maybe also at the raw data, and just basically clash it with the current designs. And also try to find ways where from this data from users we can maybe we can improve it in this design. So I just want it to take us some time, but I want to just sit down, look on every screen we have, or on the MVP flows we have with the research we've done.
Yeah, there's something else that won't be in the MVP, I'm sure of, but which people would be very keen and I think would make users very happy is the design that Christoph did with this, I don't know what's the right word to use. It's sort of this visual representation of what's going on, in your, on the GUI. So just everything on a very visual representation. He shared it, I think, a few calls back. But that would be something that's going to make a lot of people very happy. The widgets, that's going to make a lot of people very happy because what came out of the interviews as well is people felt in control and they felt like they knew what was going on just by having a visual of in place. So yeah, this is not going to be an MVP one, but if this would ever come in, it's going to make some people feel very safe and very happy.
Do we have so we have, I think MVP is well scoped, but we have these ideas kind of post MVP. Do we have a place where we can kind of list it, just to have, not to keep it in mind, but have it, on the shelf on this post MVP? Is there like an issue or something for this?
So there's in the design docs you have this section of other, which is our junk drawer. For we have this assume UTXO thing that's not clearly slotted in, explore, console. I think dev tools will also, some of these developer tools, those would also be in there really. But then we also have these are like sections of the application that we're not going to tackle. They're not important for the MVP for the first version. Mm-hmm. But then also there are individual features that are also like multi-key hardware wallet stuff, not going to be in the first version, right? So they don't. I think that's we talked about having subpages for those. But yeah, we need to have that in the design docs and issues. So design docs are really kind of this is kind of the plan, and then issues are for the conversation, for the ongoing stuff as we flesh it out. And just like with many of the other designs, we just have, like with proxy settings that we just looked at, we have some old designs and we just kind of keep working on them as we go. And at some point it's going to be done and then it will make it into the design docs, that type of thing. And someone who doesn't care about the process, they can just go to the design docs and see what the latest is.
But I think that block clock one, like, I don't know if that shows peer connections and all that kind of thing. That sort of visual is going to make, that's why, like, Sparrow was mentioned as being the one that's the most highly used favorite wallet. And this is something apparently that Sparrow does very well, visualizing stuff. So yeah, that's it from the research side. Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. I love how
that's awesome.
I love how you organize this research. It's very helpful because I usually have it much less nicely,
organized. Yeah.
Nicely organized.
All right,
so
bye,
you have this
Yarrow.
framework.
Bye, Yarrow. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, should we wrap it up? Take everything else offline or anything else? We feel like it was a good catch up.
Yeah, that's it.
I've seen you talked about Christoph, your proposal, and when I was not on the call, what was the conclusion? Like, because when you on your video, I didn't really find any things from the top of my head to like improve or change. So is it like, should we merge it to the design?
So Yashraj also created some mockups, and I have not looked at them yet. It is in the thread. I linked to it in the design docs too.
And we didn't actually get to it, right? We started with the proxy settings right away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's where is that? I thought, where is it? Yeah, sure, you shared. I have to look at it. It's there's some more conversation. Create wallet single sig. Rather than copy link. Let me see.
I guess we can next week. We can all take a look at it, and next week we can just walk through it.
Yeah, that seems like a thing we can continue offline for sure. But it'd be really great to wrap that one up. And just like with everything else, we can always make improvements and iterations on it, right? But just so it doesn't linger forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then test the PRs. I added a very small note to the design docs earlier. Let me try to pull that one up real quick.